There's something happening in the Australian outback that firefighters can't explain. They'll contain a blaze, establish control lines, watch the flames die down, and then fire erupts on the other side of a river, or a highway, or a firebreak that should have been impossible to cross. For decades, they blamed lightning, freak winds, human error. But here's what nobody was willing to admit. Those fires weren't jumping on their own. They were being carried by birds. And in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you something that will completely change how you think about animal intelligence. Something that 40,000 years of human knowledge confirmed, but Western science refused to believe until 2017. Something that suggests we might not be the only species on Earth that learned to control fire. But before I reveal what these birds are actually doing, and why it matters so much, there's something you need to understand first. There are two types of animals in the natural world: the ones that flee from fire and the ones that use it. Until recently, scientists believed only one species had ever crossed that line: us. Humans were supposed to be the only animals capable of understanding fire, of controlling it, of using it as a tool. And then researchers discovered 3 Australian raptors doing something that shouldn't be possible: the black kite, the whistling kite, the brown falcon. These birds don't just tolerate fire. They don't just hunt near flames like other opportunistic predators. They actively spread it. They pick up burning sticks. They carry them across firebreaks, rivers, and roads, sometimes for nearly a kilometer. And they drop them into unburned grass to start new fires, on purpose. Now, you might be thinking, how is that possible? Birds can't use tools. They can't understand cause and effect like that. And that's exactly what scientists thought too. But here's what they didn't know. Aboriginal peoples had been watching these birds do this for 40,000 years. They'd encoded the behavior into sacred ceremony, given the birds specific names that translate to troublemaker and firebird. And Western science dismissed all of it as myth, until the evidence became impossible to ignore. So let me show you exactly what these birds are doing, how they're doing it, and why it rewrites everything we thought we knew about animal intelligence. And it all starts with a question that sounds almost absurd. How does a bird handle fire without burning itself? Here's the thing about what these birds do. The physics shouldn't work. Fire burns at temperatures that destroy flesh. Burning sticks should be impossible to grip. A bird's lightweight body should be incinerated the moment it gets close to flames. And yet, observers have watched them do it, hundreds of times. So how do they manage it? First, the grip. Picture this. A black kite circles a grass fire. Smoke billowing, flames crackling. The bird dives. It seizes a burning stick, not by the flaming end, but by the portion that isn't actively combusting, 8 to 20 centimeters long, roughly the size of a pencil to a small ruler. Sometimes they grab it with their talons, sometimes their beak. Observers have watched birds switch sticks from beak to talons mid-flight, adjusting their grip like a person repositioning a hot pan handle. Their feet are covered in tough, keratinized scales, natural heat resistance. And critically, their exposure times are short. Grab, fly, drop. The whole operation takes seconds. Now here's what makes this even more remarkable. The sticks don't need to be actively flaming. Smoldering embers are enough. Because in Australia's bone-dry savanna, where fuel moisture drops below 10% during fire season, a smoking stick dropped into grass ignites almost instantly. And the distances these birds carry fire? 50 meters, 100 meters, 500 meters. Aboriginal elder Waipuldanya described watching a hawk drop it in a fresh patch of dry grass half a mile away, then wait with its mates for the mad exodus of scorched and frightened rodents and reptiles. Half a mile. That's not accident. That's not instinct. That's strategy. But here's the evidence that convinced even the skeptics. Researchers documented both successful and failed attempts. Birds that grab sticks, carry them, drop them, And when the grass doesn't catch, they try again. Think about what that means. If this behavior were accidental, birds mistakenly grabbing sticks while hunting prey, we wouldn't expect to see repeated attempts after failures. But that's exactly what observers report. Let me give you a specific example. Firefighter Dick Usin was working a grass fire near the Ranger uranium mine in Kakadu. The fire had burned itself out, safely contained behind a highway. Then it jumped to the other side. He drove over, extinguished it, noticed a whistling kite flying about 20 meters ahead, carrying a smoking stick in its talons. He watched it drop the stick, saw smoke curl from the dry grass. He put out that fire, then another, then another. In total, Dick Usin extinguished 7 separate fires started by kites during that single event. 7 fires, one afternoon, started by birds. And here's the detail that tells you this is a learned skill, not instinct. Approximately 25 kites were foraging at that dying fire's edge, but only 2 of them proved capable of successfully transporting burning sticks. 2 out of 25. Which means most birds can't do this. It has to be learned, practiced, mastered. And when they succeed, when the fire catches and spreads, the results are spectacular. Ornithologist Bob Gosford described it this way. Black kites and brown falcons come to these fronts because it is just literally a killing frenzy. Hundreds of raptors, sometimes thousands, congregating at fire fronts, feasting on the panicked exodus. Grasshoppers, locusts, rodents, lizards, snakes, small birds, many caught in mid-flight as they flee the flames. As Gosford put it, "Okay, there are several hundred of us here. We can all get a meal." That's not just hunting. That's ecosystem engineering. But who are these birds, and what else can they do? That's where the story gets even more interesting. 3 species have been confirmed as firehawks, and each one tells us something different about how this behavior evolved. Let's start with the most common culprit, the black kite. Scientifically known as Milvus migrans, the most frequently identified species in fire-spreading observations. Also the most abundant raptor on Earth, 6 to 7 million individuals spanning Africa, Asia, Europe, and Australia. But here's what's fascinating. Despite their global distribution, fire-spreading behavior has only been documented in Australian populations. I'll explain why that matters in a moment. But first, let me tell you what we know about black kite intelligence. A 2011 study in Spain revealed something remarkable. Black kites decorate their nests with white plastic to signal dominance. 77% of observed nests contained white plastic that the birds had actively selected and placed. But here's the part that will blow your mind. When researchers experimentally gave white plastic to lower quality individuals, those birds removed it themselves. They understood they couldn't back up the territorial claim the decoration implied. That's not instinct, that's social awareness. Black kites also bait fish. Steve DeBoos, a raptor expert, documented them dropping bread scraps from picnic areas into nearby waterholes, then striking the fish that came to investigate. Think about that. These birds have figured out that dropping food in water attracts prey within striking distance. Suddenly, fire spreading seems less surprising. The second species is the whistling kite. Named for its distinctive, loud descending whistle, a clear tee-tee-tee that echoes across the Australian landscape. So iconic that spotted bowerbirds regularly mimic it. Their eyes are estimated to be 8 times sharper than human vision. They've been documented forcing large water birds to regurgitate their catches, essentially mugging other birds for their meals. And Wikipedia, not typically a source for groundbreaking ornithological claims, specifically notes that whistling kites hover over the edges of grass fires in search of potential prey fleeing the flames, sometimes carrying burning sticks and dropping them on unburnt areas. Even Wikipedia knows. But the third species might be the most interesting of all, the brown falcon. Among the Rembarrnga and Dalabon peoples of northern Australia, this bird has a very specific name, karkanj. It means troublemaker, and the name is earned. While rangers conduct controlled burns, karkanj jumps fire breaks by carrying fire across, starts unwanted wildfires that must be extinguished, generally interferes with carefully planned fire management. Firefighters have called these birds a right pain in the backside. Some station managers have illegally shot any raptor that comes near controlled burns. But here's what those frustrated firefighters don't understand. The relationship between humans and these birds goes back 40,000 years, and it's not just antagonism. As Mimal elder Annette Murray explains, and while at times karkanj has been a little troublemaker, he's also a friend. We have a partnership with that bird. We mainly work together, the bird and us. A partnership. 3 species, 3 different raptor families, all independently developing the same extraordinary behavior. That's not coincidence. That's convergent learning. And it raises a question we'll explore in a moment. If this behavior can be learned, who taught the first bird? But first, I need to tell you about the people who knew about this long before any scientist ever did. Here's something that will change how you think about scientific discovery. For at least 40,000 years, Aboriginal peoples knew what Western science only confirmed in 2017. That's not an estimate. That's the conservative end of how long Aboriginal Australians have practiced cultural burning, deliberately setting fires to manage the landscape. And for as long as they've burned, they've watched the birds work the flames alongside them. 12 Aboriginal language groups spread across the Northern Territory, Western Australia, and Queensland, all independently reporting the same behavior. Their accounts span over half a century of recorded documentation, though the oral traditions stretch back immeasurably further. Let me share some of what they've preserved. In the Malamalak language from the Daly River region, the black kite is called kirk, an onomatopoeic name mimicking its call. The Dreamtime narrative explains, in the creation period, Kirk stole fire sticks from the dingo so that he could cook the cheeky yam. Kirk is still attracted to fires, and occasionally he can be seen carrying burning sticks from an existing fire to start more fires further away. The Martu people of Western Australia tell the Wirnpa story. A firehawk flies across the land carrying a burning stick in its beak, dropping embers that create fire below, bringing light, warmth, and protection to people. The firehawk as guardian spirit. But perhaps most remarkably, one tradition holds that a brown falcon brought humans a burning stick and gave us the gift of fire. Think about that for a moment. A Promethean mythology, the bird that gave humanity fire. And this knowledge isn't just stories, it's embedded in sacred ceremony. In the Roper River region, Aboriginal peoples practice the Yabudurua, a multi-day dreaming fire ceremony featuring elaborate theatrical reenactments of firehawk behavior. Participants imitate the birds, carrying fire from place to place, spawning new fires in what's called the burnt grass scene. The ceremony has been documented in anthropological literature since at least 1960. In Western Arnhem Land, the Lorcan is a mortuary ceremony where men carry flaming torches while singing sacred songs. The fire represents the hawk lifting up the soul of the deceased and carrying it away. The Brown Falcon, the troublemaker, is credited with founding this mortuary cycle itself. Let me share what Waipuldanya, Philip Roberts, an Alawa man, said in 1963. Remember, this was more than 50 years before Western science would confirm what he already knew. I have seen a hawk pick up a smoldering stick in its claws and drop it in a fresh patch of dry grass half a mile away, then wait with its mates for the mad exodus of scorched and frightened rodents and reptiles. When that area was burnt out, the process was repeated elsewhere. Then he added something profound. It is possible that our forefathers learnt this trick from the birds. We'll come back to that idea, because it might be the most important thing anyone has ever said about this phenomenon. Today, the Mimo Land Management Organization manages nearly 2 million hectares in central Arnhem Land. Their official logo is a raptor carrying a fire stick. Mimal elder Annette Murray explains the connection. Mimo means fire, and Katakanj is a firebird, so that's how it goes. Mimal and the firebird. I saw with my own eyes, she says, that Katakanj collecting firewood from where we made fire to go and burn other grass. 40,000 years of knowledge, encoded in language, ceremony, daily observation. And Western science didn't believe it until 2017. So what finally convinced them? Here's how knowledge that existed for 40 millennia finally made it into a peer-reviewed journal. Bob Gosford is a writer, lawyer, and ethno-ornithologist based in the Northern Territory. His rare, dual expertise in Indigenous rights law and ornithology would prove uniquely valuable. The inspiration came from reading Douglas Lockwood's 1963 autobiography, which contained Waipuldanya's account. Intrigued but finding few scientific references, Gosford put out a call to birding and ethnography networks for similar stories. What came back was overwhelming. In 2011, Gosford partnered with Mark Bonta, a Penn State geographer specializing in ethno-ornithology, and they began systematically collecting accounts. By 2013, they'd announced a formal research project. By 2015, they were presenting findings at the Raptor Research Foundation and the International Fire Ecology Congress. In September 2016, they conducted field research in the Roper River region, Catherine, and Darwin, interviewing Aboriginal elders and firefighters. In December 2017, their paper was published in the Journal of Ethnobiology. It compiled 6 published Aboriginal accounts from 8 language groups, over 20 first-hand eyewitness accounts from non-Indigenous observers, and documentation from 12 Aboriginal groups independently reporting the behavior. Lead author Mark Bonta was clear about what this represented. We're not discovering anything. Most of the data that we've worked with is collaborative with Aboriginal peoples. They've known this for probably 40,000 years or more. But not everyone was convinced. The skeptical position went like this. The birds aren't intentionally spreading fire. They're accidentally grabbing sticks while lunging for prey near flames, then dropping them when they realize their mistake. As one 1987 paper put it, while we have seen birds occasionally pick up small smoldering sticks, they usually quickly drop them. They are likely to have accidentally picked up sticks while stooping for small, fleeing prey close to the fire. Here's how the 2017 paper addressed those objections. First, accidental stick grabbing doesn't explain repeated attempts after failures. If birds were accidentally grabbing sticks while hunting, why would they try again when the first grab didn't yield prey? Second, accidental grabbing doesn't explain transport distances of up to a kilometer. Why would a bird carry a burning stick half a mile before dropping it accidentally? Third, accidental grabbing doesn't explain strategic placement. Witnesses repeatedly describe birds targeting unburned areas, across roads, rivers, and firebreaks, not just dropping sticks randomly. Fourth, accidental grabbing doesn't explain cooperative behavior. Multiple witnesses describe groups of kites working together to move fire, not individual birds making isolated mistakes. Even skeptics began to soften. Raptor expert Steve DeBoos, previously doubtful, changed his position. I think black kites and brown falcons are sufficiently intelligent to intentionally spread fires, because black kites have been seen to drop bread scraps from picnic areas into nearby water holes to bait fish within striking range. If they can bait fish, they can spread fire. One question always comes up. Why is there no video evidence? Mark Bonta addressed this directly. There's no point in chasing after the holy grail of the video. We need the field research. The practical challenges are significant. You'd need to position cameras at active fire fronts, inherently dangerous. The behavior is rare. Most observers witness it only once despite decades working in fire-prone areas. The areas are vast and remote, and you'd need to predict when and where a bird will grab a burning stick, essentially impossible. The researchers argue that ethnographic accounts are actually more valuable than simple video clips. Multiple independent witnesses, separated by thousands of kilometers and decades of time, describing the same behavior in consistent detail. That's evidence. But what does all this actually mean? What does it tell us about intelligence, about learning, about the relationship between humans and birds? That's where this story becomes truly remarkable. Let me put what these birds have accomplished into perspective. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, with brains far larger than any birds, can conceptualize fire behavior. They can predict its movement. They can navigate wildfires calmly. But they cannot control fire. They cannot start it. They cannot spread it deliberately. Crows, arguably the most intelligent birds on Earth, manufacture tools, solve complex puzzles, and plan tasks up to 24 hours in advance. But they don't use fire. Firehawks, with simpler overall cognition than either chimps or crows, have achieved something neither has: deliberate fire control. Alex Koselnik, a University of Oxford expert on animal tool use, called it a fascinating phenomenon. He noted, "These hawks are showing a form of fire control. This is the first I have heard of this in non-human animals." Think about what fire spreading requires. Tool use, employing burning sticks to modify the environment. Causal reasoning, understanding the relationship between fire and fleeing prey. Planning, identifying unburned areas up to a kilometer away and transporting fire there. Means-end reasoning, using fire as an intermediary step to achieve prey capture. Environmental manipulation, actively reshaping hunting grounds. This isn't simple opportunism. This is strategy. Which raises a fascinating question. Why only Australia? Black kites exist throughout Africa, Europe, and Asia. Fire foraging, hunting prey that flees from fires, is documented in raptors worldwide. But fire spreading? Only in Australia. The most likely explanation? This is cultural, not genetic. Australian raptors have experienced 40,000 years of Aboriginal cultural burning, the longest continuous fire management tradition on Earth. They've had more exposure to controlled fire in more predictable patterns than any raptor population anywhere. And if fire spreading is learned, which the evidence suggests, given that only 2 of 25 birds in one observation could do it successfully, then Australian populations have had far more opportunity to develop and transmit this skill. Koselnik speculated that the skill could be periodically rediscovered in different locations and then copied by younger hawks. That's cultural transmission. Knowledge passed not through genes, but through observation and learning, the same way humans spread skills. And that brings us back to Waipuldania's suggestion, the one that sounds almost too remarkable to take seriously. It is possible that our forefathers learnt this trick from the birds. The 2017 paper notes something provocative. Some birds may have used fire for hunting approximately 70 million years ago, while humans began using fire approximately 1.5 million years ago. A Royal Society paper states that bird fire followers show the availability of resources, the potential selective advantage, and by inference, that this kind of fire harvesting would be within the cognitive capabilities of early hominins. In other words, if birds could figure out that fire flushes prey, surely early humans could too. Perhaps by watching the birds do it first. We may never know if humans learned fire use from watching firehawks, but we know this. For at least 40,000 years, humans and firehawks have worked the flames together. Both species hunting, both species burning, both species reshaping the landscape with fire. The troublemaker, and its partners. Every year, 18 to 21% of Australia's tropical savanna burns, an area roughly the size of a small country, consumed by flames, season after season after season. And through all of it, the birds are watching. They've been called pests, troublemakers, a right pain in the backside. Firefighters have dealt with them by illegally shooting any raptor that comes near controlled burns. But they've also been called partners, friends, guardian spirits. They've been woven into sacred ceremony for millennia, credited with giving humanity fire itself. 40,000 years ago, Aboriginal peoples watched these birds spread fire and understood what they were seeing. In 2017, Western science finally caught up. And somewhere in the tropical savannas of northern Australia, right now, a black kite is circling a grass fire, watching the flames, waiting, perhaps carrying a smoldering stick to an unburned patch of grass half a mile away, ready to start the killing frenzy all over again. If you found this fascinating, there's more where this came from. Birds do things we barely understand, things that challenge everything we thought we knew about animal intelligence. Hit subscribe and you'll discover the most remarkable creatures on Earth. I'll see you in the next one.